Hello everyone. Hello everyone. My name is Limark Dcunha and I'm from SAIT, currently studying in Sardar Institute of Technology. So my activity for Seva-Satva course is book summary under mentor VijayaKamble. So the two books I've chosen here are The Man Who Knew Infinity and Ignited Minds. So let's get started with the first one. Yeah, so The Man Who Knew Infinity, A Life of the Genius Ramanujan. This book is about an Indian mathematician around early 1900s. His impact of the world is this book is about his life, his work, his journey to England, to Cambridge, and how his work still continues to impact mathematical world. As you can see the quote here by Clifford Stoll, a gem, what Mozart was to music and Einstein was to physics, Ramanujan was to math. It is a pretty big comparison as compared to the other two gentlemen, as their stature is. Yeah, so we can get an idea of how important he was to and still is to mathematical world, although not that popular. As you can see, the prologue here describes Ramanujan in this book. So the author described him as a simple man. His name was he was a sorry. His Ramanujan was a simple man. His needs were simple, and he was intelligent in realms concerned mathematics, hardworking, and in his own way charming. But by the standards of Cambridge, he was supremely narrow and naive. This book is about the story of clash of cultures between India and West alike, the glittering world of Cambridge between the pristine truths of Western mathematical tradition and mysterious powers of intuition, which Ramanujan dazzled West and East alike. So, yeah, in the coming chapters, the author tells a story about his birth, his raising up, his journey to his initial mathematics day in India, his journey to England, his work in England, and his death. Very yeah. So let's get started with the first chapter in the temple schoolness. Here, this chapter describes Ramanujan's birth, his growing up, how his personality was. As you can see, the author said Ramanujan was a very bright kid at a very early age, and his he passed his primary examinations with a very good grade. He topped the district. Then Ramanujan joined a town high school, which was about 5 minute walk from his house, and it was a very reputed high school, which the youth from the region, which launched the youth from the region into their college and career, and it was very well reputed within his alumni circle. And uh, Ramanujan spent there a year for 6 years, and he was very happy with what he was doing. But his, as you can see, his thirst for mathematics was always more. So when he would take tuitions for cash for salaries, since he come from a poor family, he would always go beyond what was taught, what was about to he was supposed to be teaching them, always going into different realms of mathematics and get into his own thoughts. So he was a very religious boy. His mother had a strong influence on him, and he was a strong believer in God, and always read, always celebrated festival, always believed in God, and also attributed his mathematical genius to God. As you can see, chapter 2, Raging with Delight. Here, this chapter describes the beginning of Ramanujan's mathematical journey. So, around 1903, before just joining high school, he got his hands on Carr's book, a mathematician. So, book was essentially compilation of 5,000 or so equations. So, it was a rich body of mathematical work, not with proof, but all the results. So it gave Ramanujan, it intrigued his curiosity as he was always would take that book and try to get into his result on by own. So that's how it he was keeping himself busy. So yeah, as you can see, the author says here, Ramanujan's world was one in which numbers had properties built into them. So, but the thing is, he got so into mathematics that apart from mathematics, he almost failed in every other subjects. So but the thing failed in every other subject, and that academic failure forced him to develop uh, unconventionally free of the social pressures. Um, he was able to not go divert the social pressure path, educational path, but for 5 solid years he was left alone to pursue mathematics, and he made money from tutoring, which he pursued mathematics rigorously very well. And the thing is, when his mother saw him doing nothing with his life, as she saw, she got him married. But when he got married, though outwardly nothing changed, but as he was in the role of a breadwinner, he had to do something. He was not no longer allowed to pursue mathematics on his own. Yeah. So he then applied for job at Post Trust, and which was British. The bosses were British, so a lot of people he applied there, and the British official couldn't make sense of what he was doing because they didn't understand it. Because mostly a lot of mathematical work that Ramanujan did was uh, slightly different, because lot of it was slightly unstandard, because he had got into results on by his own, which were previously known. So he did not know the things that were previously known. He got everything on his own. Whatever help he got from little books he had. So he had different symbols and notations for different types of works. And also he didn't give proof, step-by-step proof for his results. So they were dazzled yet confused, like is he a genius or just a fraud? Yeah, so but he was trying hard. And then as people got to know his capability, they advised him to write to England, because at that time India had nothing. The Mathematical Society was also in a bad state. So he wrote to three individuals: H.F. Baker, E.W. Hobson, and G.H. Hardy. Out of the first two rejected, and G.H. Hardy accepted. So now let's get into accepted. Saw his letter and responded to his letter. So, chapter 4, Hardy. It's about the life of J.H. Hardy, how he grown up, how he had how he had reached the places where usually British elite were known for. So he came from a humble background. His parents were teachers, and how he had rose to Cambridge, how he had this chapter describes his personality, his work, and how he was a superstar in English mathematics. Yeah, so the life for Hardy was going as usual smooth. Then the letter came from India, and his life took a new different turn. Chapter 5. Here in this chapter, the Hardy describes the reaction of Hardy on seeing mathematics. So when Hardy received the letter, he initially was dazzled by what it was. He was surprised, and also he also was confused with the genius of fraud. But then he spent some time, and as soon as spent time on him, on the letters that Ramanujan said, the letters and concept got more clearer and clearer, and he was dazzled by what was his in front of him. He wrote to Ramanujan about his work. He gave some suggestion. Also, he showed all the letters to around the Trinity College in Cambridge. So, as surprised by, he made arrangement for Ramanujan to come to England. After some hesitation, Ramanujan agreed to go to England. So, yeah, now Ramanujan Spring. This chapter describes Ramanujan's journey in the England, his initial days in England. So he got into Cambridge. This is one of my favorite. He didn't offer too much proof for the concept, but his mathematical was of genius. Here's my favorite, one of my favorite lines where author describes his work. Here was a man who could work out modular equations and theorem of complex multiplication in orders unheard of, whose mastery of continuous fraction was a formal side by any rate beyond that of any mathematician involved, but found himself the function equation of zeta function and dominant terms of most of the problems in analytic theory of numbers. And he had never heard of a doubly periodic function or Cauchy theorem, and had indeed but the vaguest idea of function complex variable was. His ideas as to what constituted mathematical proofs were mostly of shadowy description. All his results knew right ahead when there a process of mingled argument, intuition, and induction, of which he was entirely able to give any coherent account. So this is one of the finest paragraph which describe Ramanujan because he was a gifted genius. He never gave too much proof about his work, which dazzles still people around the world today. His notebooks are still studied. So chapter 7 is English Shell. This work tells about the further work of Ramanujan, how he was able to work and how his vegetarianism and his not changing lifestyle because of England. The weather had affected his health. He in England he had found his intellectual. He had found a cure to his intellectual loneliness, which was not found in India. But here he was emotionally lonely. Right, he was not. He was just working day and night in Hardy, in Neville, in other. He was not able to find companionship, friendship. It was more like a professional relationship. So he went without family, and in English, whether he was not, and he could not find good food, and that things worst when World War I happened. So he was not able to get the food that was come from India, and he was a pure vegetarian, so he was not eating meat and other English food. So that affected his health, and he caught tuberculosis because there are, and also his treatment didn't go too much well because of the World War I had reached Cambridge. It had affected Cambridge. It had reached entire Europe. Also, the Cambridge was affected. Yeah. So this chapter, previous two chapters, also go deep into his mathematical work, his contribution. We don't have time to cover it now. So in chapter 8, we have in somewhat different health. So as it's in the Ramanujan got little better, but his health was not getting better. So the people in England decided him to return in India. So see if he'll react better to the India's temperature. His body will react better to India's temperature and work, and he'll find family. So he'll be able to, with the hope of he'll do better in India. They send him in back to home, but as you can see, he arrived in Bombay. But 10 weeks before Ramanujan's arrival in Bombay, the Indian Mathematical Society met there is a second conference. Ramanujan's brilliant career is a very humble origin and celebration to the Royal Society every speaker's week. So, as you can see, he was a decorated person by the time he had been there. And he was very popular and very celebrated. The Indians were very proud of him. Uh, uh, but, okay, but all in 9 months. But when in India, his health deteriorated, and on April 1920, he lapsed into unconsciousness, and around after 2 hours, he died. He died at very young age of 32 years old. And as you can see, one of the account is my one of the favorite positions. So in 1920s, astrophysicist Subramanian Chandrasekhar, who won Nobel Prize afterwards in his career, said we were proud of Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Rabindranath Tagore, and often Ramanujan. In terms of Indian mathematics, Ramanujan, uh, all the mathematicians who reached distinction during the 3 or 4 decades following Ramanujan were directly or indirectly inspired by his example. Such was Ramanujan's impact during years after his death. Okay, so we are done with the first book. Let's go to second book. The second book is by late President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. This book is about all about motivating the young people so that India develop into developed nations. So as it says, nations consist of people, and with the effort, a nation can upload all it ever worked for. Motivating India's people and its youth, especially the central theme of United Minds. So here there are various chapters. In the first chapter, he gives the message of dreaming, that we should always dream for higher things, and we should put our all energy into dreams. In second chapter, he talks about role models, his work, and why we society needs role models. In third chapter, he tells the importance about the scientists and teachers of this country, visionaries. We need them like Vikram Sarabhai, Satish Dhawan, to name a few. Then in fourth chapter, he tells the importance of spirituality in this country, how we should be learning from saints and from our books, and how we must include spirituality in our daily life. In fifth chapter, he tells patriotism beyond politics and religion. He says we should be, we as Indians should ignore all the forces that tend to divide us, and work with one goal in mind, that is developing India into developed nation. In chapter 6, he claimed that India should now get into become a knowledge society, knowledge power, as this is the proper way to go to forward in the modern world. In chapter 7, getting forces together, he says that we need to go in a mission driven world, a mission driven state, and with one mission of implementing policies fast and making India a developed nation. In last chapter 8, building, and he tells the story of building new state or Jharkhand, how he is stricken by the beauty that India has, natural resources India has, everything India has for a developed nation. But the mindset is lacking, so we must change our mindset. Also, in chapter 9, he gives the message to his countrymen. That is his last message. So this last paragraph is really concludes of the book. What I've tried to tell you in this book is that we must be aware of our higher self, and we ourselves are citizens of a developed nation. We are great civilization. Each one of born here must trust in the wisdom of the civilization. It is for you. For put yourself in the time tune with music of the universe. So yes, we are done with both the books. Thank you.